Welcome back to IllumiNation Network podcast. Joining us this week, we have Jerry Quiroz, knowledge keeper for the Quechua tribe. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jerry.
Hey, thank you for having me.
And today we're going to be talking a lot about the plant medicine Huachuma, commonly known as magic cactus, peyote, San Pedro. Those are all different strains, but essentially the magic cactus is the topic of our discussion today. Jerry here facilitates the cactus and is a large part of his background with his people. How exactly does Huachuma differ from other psychoactive substances that people know about?
Well, there's many ways to see it. The way that we, based on the stories that we've been told, is that these are power plants, sacred plants. It's not just about the psychedelic trip. It's more about the healing and the introspective work that's the purpose where they were given to us. So this is more a medicinal approach than a psychedelic approach.
You know, and I hate to even use that term because of the gravity of what these experiences can be to someone's life. Like one experience with a medicine like Huachuma, and it could be one of the most transformative experiences of their lives. So I totally agree with you about like calling it more sacred rather than just a psychedelic recreational drug. I know with like mushrooms, for example, people experience feeling like the plant is alive and speaking to them during their experience. Would you say this is something similar with Huachuma, or how does it differ?
Well, with mushrooms, we call them the holy children. They're great teachers, and they pretty much show us that there's more out there. Okay. With the Huachuma, it's pretty much more into like inside perspective, more like a visionary plant. Something that might help you see through your traumas. As for mushrooms, it's something more fun for the moment, although guided mushroom medicine can also take you to deeper levels.
Definitely. So in a sense, it's providing this spaciousness for us to see a macro lens, or even tune in on a micro lens to something that needs to be looked at, or seeing the broad perspective and giving us some clarity in our lives.
I believe that both of the plants are pretty much teaching us that we're part of this unity and not seeing us apart from the universe or the cosmos. That's mainly the teaching of the plant. Now, how you understand the consciousness and how you bond with what you're becoming as your being evolving, that's on each individual's journey.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely see that with how we integrate the lessons from these medicines. They show us how to be more at peace in our lives, how to, like you say, get in touch with nature, and have that interconnectedness that helps us live these wholesome lives. And is that essentially that teaching of nature, that integration of nature, is that essentially how these medicines came to be practiced and used and facilitated throughout societies and cultures?
Yes, that's actually that's the whole purpose, and that's actually how the plant medicine changes name within the region. Like for the southern of the Americas, we use it as Huachuma, San Pedro. As for Central America and North America, it's more as a peyote. The cactus itself will change the form, and the same way, the part of the cactus that's done the healing has also morphed because they adapt to different regions. The spirit within the medicine that was given by the creator is still the same. The practices that it's found in Huachuma and peyote from all different cultures from north to south of the Americas, it's pretty much the same teaching. It's pretty much the same key of another self-consciousness for our work. That's why we call it sacred plants, guiding plants, power plants, medicinal plants.
Yeah. You know, that's something that really fascinates me too with you know, these sacred medicines, these entheogens, as they're sometimes called, where there's so many different strains and varieties of them. They all seem to have like their tiny little niche perspective different than the other one before it. And that also brings me to think, like, for those who grow these cactuses, I've heard they take a very long time to grow, but for those who grow them in like pots, for example, maybe they're not getting as much wisdom from them because the plant itself isn't integrated into the ground and integrating with that specific region of earth. What do you think about that?
I think there's two ways we can see it. We can see it from a mechanical perspective, in which we understand that the bigger the pot, the bigger the soil, the bigger the cactus. Or we can see it from a energetic, spiritual perspective, that the spirit that's going to grow in that cactus is going to be as powerful and as knowledgeable, regardless of the shape, because it's going to be the time and energy you've put into that cacti to grow. With what purpose is growing? Is it growing to be offered to someone as medicine? Or is it growing to preserve the cacti within nature, within this new way of living? Or is it become something that you sell for an amount of money?
Oh, hopefully not that last one.
Hopefully. That's why we try to keep the teachings that were passed on to us in order to preserve as pure as we can the medicine. Because the medicine can also get contaminated on the way.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about the Huachuma, how it works and the components.
Okay.
Okay. So the main component of the Huachuma is mescaline. Mescaline is going to be separated in serotonin and dopamine. Those two elements will activate the immunoglobulins within our gut system to regenerate ourselves and to boost our immune system. As different than psychedelics as mushrooms that we spoke, the Huachuma will take approximately 30 to 40 minutes to be active, and it will remain for like 2 to 4 hours. The way that you navigate this experience, it's much slower than other medicines. Actually, Huachuma is one alternative for people that don't handle well ayahuasca because of the way of the purging, and ayahuasca is more like a root deep level, and Huachuma is more like an upper visionary level. And also the experience with the Huachuma is going to be something more like a visionary introspective aspect. It helps a lot with the visions because it calms down that internal dialogue of our minds that are constantly going from right or wrong, good or bad, yes or no. So that's why the name is also Huachuma. The part of Hua, it will be understood from the translations. There's many ways you can understand the translation of Huachuma. From the dictionary kind of aspect, you will have the watch part, which means remove, and Uma that translates to head, which translates to removing the head. In the translation of the Catholic Church, they put it as San Pedro, because that's the translation, because he's the key holder for heaven. In our knowledge and our practices, it's pretty much letting your mind free. So they switched the name from Huachuma to San Pedro, which is the key holder on Catholic Church of the holder of the keys of heaven, which is pretty much the translation from the Catholic Church. For us, it's more understanding of Huachuma, which it kind of sets your mind free from that internal dialogue, from the dual mind that is constantly saying yes, no, right or wrong, up or down, So there's many different ways that you can see the translation go, but the experience is what's really gonna give you the name. It's hard to express on words, but if you were to say within a contest, it changes, it helps with addictions, it helps with the internal dialogue, it helps with self-doubt, depression, and many other conditions that are found in today's modern world.
Just the etymology of the name, being able to quiet the mind. There's so much potential for healing to be done once we're able to get into a space like that. And so for this medicine to be able to facilitate this spaciousness for clarity, that's it's a really amazing thing that I think you know, a lot of people out there wouldn't necessarily think that that's what it's doing when they hear about, you know, psychedelic substances, but integrally and internally, it's creating this space for them to do all of this inner healing, this inner work, this looking at themselves clearly. um, really fascinating medicine, really grateful that it's here. um, when you were talking about the intentionality of growing it, um, how long exactly does it take for this cactus to mature? And what are maybe some sort of processes or rituals that people do to try to encourage the, you know, the proper intention and energy into the plant?
Some of those rituals and bondings with the plants are created after ceremony. On our
Mm,
retreats, people will take a piece of the cacti so they can grow and monitor their growth as well. People
mm,
that's come to our ceremonies, they've used many techniques because it also have to adapt with the weather. If you leave it on cold weather, the cacti will die. So some people use it to bring it into their homes, put it next to their altars, use some alternative light through the winter, so the cactus keeps growing. Um, Back home, it just grows naturally up out in the open. The guardian of the Huachuma here in the Pacific Northwest, he actually has a special habitat made for them and
mm.
tries to keep all the traditional ways of how it grows and the compost and the rituals and the offerings that are given in order for the plant to keep that bridge of connection between spirit and plant. And before you mentioned about psychedelic experiences and the different, also something else that we experience when we're doing our ceremonies is that with this kind of plant medicine, you are not hallucinating, because hallucination, it will just confuse or it will just trick your senses.
Mhm.
On this plant medicine, you will be working with both your conscious and your subconscious at the same time, which actually makes you realize all the powerful being that you are. But constantly, we don't use our subconscious as much as our subconscious uses us.
Either that blending of the conscious and subconscious mind kind of reminds me of what it would feel like to be in almost like a dreamlike state.
Yes, that's why they call it the key of heavens, the set your mind free plant, because you have that enlightenment.
Yeah. And you know, any sort of plant medicine ceremony I've been on myself, it has never been anything where I'm seeing something that isn't there. I'm more so seeing into the subtle reality of what is there. Like, for example, on a mushroom experience, I'll see, you know, vines and trees, and it'll look as if the vines and trees are breathing. I know they aren't necessarily like breathing in the same way that I breathe, but in a sense they are, you know, taking in carbon dioxide and alchemizing it within themselves. But just feeling that connectedness and that life, like I wasn't necessarily actually saying that, but it felt like I was. And the mental visualization is part of what helped me feel connected to nature in that particular experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's the beauty about these power plants, you know. We it's having the key to access a different state of consciousness that's only a few people achieve through like intense practices.
Mhm.
And it's also an opportunity for people that live in the city to have a relief or have a connection with their true beings, because sometimes the normal regular life, you have so many stimulus, so many things that draw your attention from where it needs to be. And most of the times we've seen that people need those moments of quietness, need to find the answer in the silence, to actually hear their body speak to themselves, where actually that's where healing starts. Sometimes we're too busy on our day-to-day work that we forget about ourselves, trying to take care of our kids, family. Is just, we don't have the time to focus on ourselves. And that's the beauty of these plans, through a few hours, you can have a different perspective.
Hmm. Like a recalibration of all the processes that we've been working on, all of the plans that we're trying to make, and really refining down to what is my effort best put towards in this moment right now. And
Yeah, that's exactly what you're saying. I like to say that these power plants will refine your energy, and it's not about that, you're gonna forget or it's gonna do the immediate healing on you, but it's gonna show you where you need to work.
hmm
I had this friend of mine tell me this, that he heard from another person. He's saying that the Western medicine will make you feel good, and then you will feel bad or sick. With these plants and these ancient medicines, you will feel sick, but then you will feel good.
Yeah, that just the process of like how that works with like why purging is a good thing. It reminds me of like, for example, when I've done a gut cleanse in the past, and I've integrated my gut with better food, and then the moment that I eat bad food again, it has so much more of an aversion with my body. Like my body has so much of a strong reaction to it, that like, obviously me getting sick from that was meant for me to get better from putting this toxic food in my body. And I think much to the same way, these power medicines, these power plants, will reflect the inner healing that we need to do, and in the process purge some of the physical things that are contributing to that.
It's like you were saying, when you clean your gut, you will starting to feel, when you eat something that it wasn't good for you, you will feel the difference and you will choose not to eat that. With the plant medicines, because it's working at our conscious and subconscious level, it will make our minds understand on which situations we should wait, or we should think, or take the pause and not react, because people are constantly reacting. If there's this part of this one teachings that this teacher of mine told me, is that in order to live in the natural way, you have to think with your heart and feel with your mind, in which kind of understands that the heart will never fool you. As if we want to go by the mind, most of the times it will trick us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and anytime we're reacting, we're kind of moving one-dimensionally. It makes us easier to be led, and in that sense, controlled by temptations and outside forces. So very, very wise insight with that. How long have people been using Huachuma, and what was like the original story for how it kind of became used?
We have recollection even before the invasion, from when the Spaniards came. This is pre-colonial times. You can find it on textiles, clays, and you can find it on ceremonial grounds all over Peru, Bolivia, all over the Andes of the South, Ecuador also. And this goes thousands of years pre-colonial, and through like pictures, clay representations, stories, and the way that the tradition is passed on, that they teach you how to cook the medicine, they teach you all these other rituals and understandings of the plant. Is the way that it's being preserved.
Okay, and does the medicine itself require a lot of preparation, or like when it was first discovered, did someone just like happen to break open a cactus and drink a little juice?
No, it's always the understanding for us, based on the pieces that from history that we've collected it, is that it's always been offered in a ceremonial way. And there's two ways that you can offer it. One, it's going to be cooked with boiled with water in a very specific way, and the other one is eating it raw, which is actually how one of my first teachers ate it the whole time. So he will used to have a medicine bag with a little chunks of the cacti, just
Okay.
like a little pieces of candy.
Yeah.
And now you will notice after a while that his lips starts turning a little blue. And we will speak with Mr. Burns. Mr. Burns, what are you eating? And he's like, oh, I'm having a candy from the Andes. I'm like, candy from the Andes? Yeah, you should have some. And that's how we started walking during the vision quest. And that's how, that's one of the ways. Another way that is the one that we do here is that we will prepare the medicine, in which first we will be removing the thorns from the cacti, just like we're trying to clean ourselves from those energies and traumas and emotions that no longer belong to us. The thorns no longer serve the cacti because it's going to be cooked and it's not part of the preparation for the medicine. Usually you will cook mostly the green part for the effect of the mescaline that is holds on the green part of the cacti. On some other ceremonies, you will use part of the heart. On some other ceremonies, you will use the skin as well. So it depends on which aspects you're working on within the same plant.
Okay.
That it's all prepared and done differently according to the intentions of the group.
Mm-hmm. And the two different ingestion methods, do they result in different like effects, like you were saying? Like is it intended to be different, or would you say like the more like raw ingestion is a little harder on the gut, it takes some adjusting before, or like some experience before trying something like that?
I will say it's more preference, because you will get there.
Okay.
Either presentation, you will get there. It's just more of the preference. Some people don't like too much liquid because you have more purging, and they rather have it like more raw and it's less purging. Some other people like more the fluid because it's less hard on them.
Okay.
So it's kind of this it's kind of the same way with let's say in this example, Huachuma and ayahuasca. With ayahuasca, we will find more purging than in Huachuma.
Okay.
It's some people don't like the purging, so they choose Huachuma as an alternative.
And you had mentioned like in the preparation for the ritual how like preparing the medicine and putting it in the pot, taking the needles off, all of this seems kind of fractal towards the experience itself. What were some sort of other things that kind of came about as the rituals around the medicine were formed? Like what seemed to just naturally make sense as including a part of the ritual, like what you were saying, removing the thorns, as like making ourselves softer, preparing ourselves?
So the difference between ancient practices from before and today's, it has to do with the atmosphere. So with that being said, on some ceremonies, some people will practice just serving you the medicine, that it's on a bottle, that they got it somewhere or prepped it at home and they brought it for the ceremony, and everyone gets a cup and they serve the medicine and they do their journey. The way that I try to do it, that is kind of preserving a little way the things and ways that we've been taught. It's people participate within cleaning the cacti as you create a dialogue with the plant. So the plant knows who it's working with. So the plant knows the intentions, the plant knows, what aspects. You first create a dialogue. And then there's all these different practices and guides through the cooking of the medicine that we will also be working on our different aspects. On more super, more deeper, but pretty much it's creating that communion with the cacti.
Okay.
And the plant understanding, and also, going through that preparation process with the group, it creates a different bond because we'll be sharing stories and experiences as the medicine is listening and cooking. So by the time that you receive the communion of the medicine, if you're working with a more energetic, a more spiritual round aspect, you've created a different web surrounding you and your circle, creating creating a different magnet, everyone going on the same direction.
Okay. Wow. That sounds like a really beautiful experience, and something that, you know, people would love to, that they wouldn't really get until they experienced firsthand, because of how so many people in society are disconnected from those subtler aspects of reality. So that's a really beautiful way to integrate people into the medicine and the experience. And yeah, that's really cool. The I just had one interesting question. How did, like, the colonialization of Americas, how did that influence your people, and how did that influence the the facilitation of the medicine, or even, like, was the medicine given to the people who were migrating there? What was the story around that time?
Well, what it's happening in South America, Central and North America, it's pretty much similar story. The land was taken from the natives, and the resources and all this generational and systemic society was built around it. As for the medicine type, at the beginnings, they've tried to exterminate it. They actually went after all the medicine men and people who knew these kind of practices to get rid of the knowledge and to actually prevent people from the future knowing about these ancient practices and medicines, because we had our beliefs before they arrived and they didn't align. And back then was pretty much their way or the highway, but there was no highway, so it was just and unfortunately some of the practices were lost, some of the sayings were lost, but the power of the plant was able to transcend generations. And we were like seeds. When they bury us, we just came back. So it's kind of like the same way the plant. Part of the plant after the ceremony will also be buried, and you will see it come back from those grounds. That also represents our growth. If with the practice itself, I don't think that the teaching has been lost, because the plant is the teacher. The plant holds the knowledge, and the plant keeps growing. So that hasn't been lost. What I believe that is a disconnection is between how we make that bonding and how we call for those ancestors, spirit guides, guardian angels to come help us when we are facilitating that kind of medicine. I believe that that type of facilitating also has to be adapted and updated, just like a software is updated. These kind of teachings have to, it's on us, the newer generation, to be able to adapt into these new times in order to make sense. Hopefully now we have quantum physics and other forms of science that explains what we were speaking before. So it makes it easier for having a global understanding of it. But I will say that the spirit and the teaching of the plant remains intact from the day first, because the plants will be here. They've been here before us and they will be here after us. Actually, they store all that memory that we have forgotten. That's why they're power sacred plants. They teach us.
Wow. That's truly incredible. And you know, as much as I would like to talk about or as much as I would like to grieve essentially for some of the hardship that you had gone through, that your people had gone through in that time, the inherent wisdom of the medicine holding true, reteaching some of the things from the past, you know, it makes me want to think about the path forward and getting this medicine to people. You know, this is, America itself is a very young country, relatively speaking, especially to some of the natives who are from the Americas. And one thing that I would like to keep in mind as we start integrating these medicines into our new culture is how do we respect where they came from, and how do we bring sacredness and tradition to these medicines so they can be used in the best possible way.
I
So
will,
I guess, I guess what I'm asking is what would be appropriate for America to become more inclusive to these medicines?
I will say that yes, but we will have to be done in a respectful way. It can't be on that same colonial way of taking and profiting of something that is not yours. It cannot be like cultural appropriation, because first of all, you might get some of the experience, but you're not going to find the true healing that is provided by those spirits of the ancestors, of the people who know what truly sacred is. It's not becoming a healer over a weekend and certified. It's not about training you and heal your tribe. So it's more about how you want to incorporate these kind of practices into your, the people that are interested in this kind of healing. So that's the only way that we can actually, honor and respect the person that works with the cacti from, older times, definitely has a different connection than from someone that became spiritual 3 years ago. So it's kind of like at the same time that people will go to see a doctor on Western medicine, and they will see, okay, this doctor have been to this kind of university and they've done this many hours in this hospital and they have these good reviews or whatever. They should do the same thing with whoever they choose to sit on a circle with this kind of medicine. It's like, hey, what's your background, where you're from? I mean, where do you get the stuff? Like, the same things that you'd request for Western medicine, you should look on these kind of practices. And I think that should help your request.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of talk, like with the podcast I've done recently, where we're talking about psychedelic law and the future of these things becoming more prevalent and legal in the United States. And I feel like what's going to be required is an integration with the sacred knowledge, because there's a lot of churches that are going to be popping up that are doing this sort of homebrew, not very experienced, long-term kind of apprenticeship with the medicine, that relationship with the medicine that's required. And I think it's a really important time for us as people who live in this continent to really think about the ways that we can learn the knowledge to the point where it becomes practical and useful to everyone around us. And I think that one of the only ways for us to do that properly is to develop a dialogue with the tribes, develop a dialogue with the people who use this medicine, and have the utmost respect for it.
Few of the things that you might want to look for when you are seeking for this kind of facilitator, it's always been for us, it's kind of like the same on Western medicine, or what school that you came from. In this case will be like, who initiated you? Is it a higher shaman? Like, who initiated you? Do you have a good relationship with that relation? Or did you went and learned that from that person and you never spoke again? Where's your medicine coming from? Is it coming from a source that you buy and sell? Or is it coming from like some kind of connection, relationship where money no longer speaks, but everything is understood as an exchange of energy? Like, those are different aspects that people can see very clear. If you're not initiated, if you're not part of a culture, if you're not even look like the guy from the picture doing this, then that should give you a good sign that that person is not it. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that that person doesn't have its powers. Actually, everyone has their own skills and powers that the plants actually show you that you can achieve. But you have to be really careful when you're dealing with spiritual rounds with ancestors, because we're swimming in waters that are not used to be swimming.
Definitely. And oh, I'm sorry. 1 second. I gotta check something real fast. Mm-hmm. Sorry, my dog was getting into something. What was the last thing you had said?
What?
I was checking my dog real fast. What was the last thing you had said?
I don't know. It finished something like yeah, that we should be careful who facilitates this kind of medicine, because sometimes we're swimming in waters that we're not used to.
Definitely. Okay. And yeah, so that's just another reason why, as I do this podcast and I talk more to people who facilitate the medicine, who are interested in facilitating medicine, or who are knowledgeable about personal experience, that we're defining the standards, and that we're going to go forward in a way that respects the medicine, respects the people who develop the practices around the medicine, and hopefully give more of this medicine to America and heal together.
Yeah, that's a good word, heal together, because people forget that they are the medicine. They just have to remember. Sometimes people waste a lot of time trying to learn and learn when all you must do is remember. So that's a great way to heal as a community, as a collective. If people have, if people give them times to themselves to practice this.
But yeah, all of that sounds really beautiful, and I can't wait for the future of America and these medicines to come into more people's lives and bring that healing. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jerry. What's like your website and your social media handles so people can find you?
Yes, thank you for having me. On social media, where you can find me under, I go by Jerry Q, and the Instagram, it's Hampuy Hampuy, 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 Hampuy Hampuy. You can find that on the social, on Instagram, Facebook. There's a few of those if you have any more information you want to seek. And basically, I want everyone to know that with these plants medicines, the intention is that refine our energy in order to have a better journey. So it's not about healing like every aspect, because the healing part is misunderstood, and it's not that it's no longer going to exist. Healing means that it's still there, but it doesn't no longer hurt you. So focus also on the understandings of the words, and don't be,
Excellent. And thank you so much, Jerry. For anyone who might be interested in, working with you or finding out more about how they could get access to this medicine, do you have any like projects coming up, or would they just go to your website and your socials to kind of see all of that?
For anyone that wants to get a hold of us and know more about the ceremony, they can find us on Hampuy Hampuy on Instagram and Facebook, and it's HAMPUY, HAMPUY, Hampuy Hampuy. Or you can call this number 971-413-3455. And like we say back home, Ipanan Chiskama, which means until we see again, because we will be back.
Awesome. And thank you so much for your time, Jerry. And for
All right.
everyone listening, thank you so much, and stay gold.
All right, guys. Thank you. Have be safe.